All right, you're ready to add a new piece of yarn to your project. This is one length of yarn that I've woven in, and you notice it ended up being right here, a little over middle of the project. And it really doesn't matter where it ends up, honestly. Just make sure that you have a tail hanging down of yarn that's not used, that's at least this long, if not just a little bit longer. Okay, now we're not going to be tying any knots. We don't want knots in our project because it will show and it won't make them nice and smooth. So what you want to do is pick out a new piece of yarn, which you could use the same color, but I decided to change up and do some lime green now. So I just loaded on my needle, my new piece of yarn, and remember that you're pulling down the extra from the needle a little bit so that it won't fall out on you. Always make sure only one piece of yarn passes through. So there's two all the way across, and then that tail ends up from the needle, and then it goes back to one piece. One piece is what you're actually weaving, okay? And once you get all of this woven in, all that one piece, and it gets right here to where the thread is back around from the needle, what you'll need to do is make sure you shorten that as you work, okay? So now we're going to add a new piece. Now what in the world do you do? I mean, blue didn't finish his job. He should have gone on across and back around. So green's going to have to take over for him. And instead of starting right where blue left off, if we did, we'd be going under. No, we'd be going over, because this one went under and this one would go over. Instead of doing that, if I was to do that and not overlap it, you see what would happen is you would have two tails side by side hanging down, but there would be a hole because nobody went over or under this guy and kind of secured him in. So what you're going to do is back up a little bit. You need to copy what this row is doing with your weaving. Now we never do that when we weave except when we add a string. So you're going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 warp strings and take this new one and go under, over, under, over, under, and we're going to continue that row. Now I want to stop a second and show you. Do you see that when I pull this through, green finishes blue's job, but also overlapped the last blue string, 5 strings back, and that way what's going to happen is there's not going to be a hole left. That's the only place in your whole project that you'll ever copy the weaving pattern. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pull this all the way through and show you what it'll look like when you're to the right spot. So you want to make these two pieces hang down. We call those the tail of the yarn. Okay? And if you think about it, I tell students sometimes it looks like if we drew a face right here, it'd be two little girls' pigtails. That kind of lets you know you did it correctly. All right, so at this point, all you would do is flip over and continue to weave. Now when you're on this side, it's going to start green above blue, and you do just as you always have. Blue the last time went under, so you'll go over. And I'm going to show you just a little bit more, because when you flip this over, it's going to look a little confusing at first. So we get to the end of this one and push it down. Okay, now it's time to rotate it over again. Well, what do, Miss Kingsmore? I mean, I've got green here and I got blue here, and then I got part of this blue. All you're going to do, guys, is you're going to look at this last string right here. Forget all this over here. And you're going to say, this one's under, so I'm going over. And look what happens. It picks up with the right pattern, doesn't it? Okay, so once you do that, and come all the way across, and push it down with your fingers like a little comb. At first, this right here doesn't look right because we copied. But the more weaving you do above it, it covers it up. Because see, we can't even tell where those new strings were added, can we? Okay. Now right now you might be thinking, oh, this stuff is hanging down. What are we doing with that? Well, later in another step, I'm going to show you how to hide these. For right now, you just want to leave them hanging there. So at this point, what you'll do is once you have watched this as many times as you have to understand it, you do it yourself, you add a new piece of yarn in, then you'll take the learning guide to Miss Kingsmore and get her to check that you have added in your new piece of yarn correctly and that you know how to do it now. Because after that, you just continue to weave. Whenever you're ready to stop green or you're finished with green, you would pick a new color and begin that new color the same way we just did it here. You've learned all the steps to how to weave now. And when you get all the way to the very top from weaving, you got to go all the way up to these lines right here. This is what it's going to look like, okay? And it's going to have all these little pieces of yarn hanging down. Then I'll show you how to hide those. That's when you know you're finished, when you get to the tip top up here to these lines, okay? So at this point, you'll go get your learning guide checked off and you'll continue weaving till you get to the very top at these lines here.